What's up everybody, how's it going, and welcome to this episode of Car Rant. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about how much it costs to build a car like my Evo. Now before we get into this list, I want to put a couple of caveats out there right off the bat, because these things will be something I consider in my full total value. I am coming at this list of parts, the cost of how much it took to make this car from start to finish. I am not leaving anything out. The only things that I am leaving out are accessory items that really don't affect the bottom line, in my opinion. And that would be stuff like the rear diffuser, the JDM tail lights, my shift knob and shift boot. Things that are a little bit more aesthetic, that don't really have a functional aspect to them, in the sense of it has power, aerodynamics, things of that nature. I'm also not going to include the new bumper, because it's technically not something that has been done yet to the car. And I'm not going to include anything to do with the more, say, maintenance-y aspects of it, because not everyone's maintenance needs are the same as mine, because I got my car with pretty low miles and I put that car to work. So without further ado, let's jump into this list. My name is Nick Lanza and you are watching an episode of Car Rant. To kick this all off, we obviously need to start from the beginning. And in our case, that would mean us buying the car from a shop in Florida. Now, I got my car at the time was an okay deal, and now is definitely a good deal. I got my car for $14,000 with title and tags, and about $1,000 in shipping to go from Florida to my home in Leesburg. For those unaware, I live in Northern Virginia, and here we have some very specific requirements for our cars. We have to go past a safety inspection as well as an emissions inspection. Not all counties have the emissions inspection, but all counties do have the safety inspection. That said, all counties still require the use of a catalytic converter. You guys get the point. So straight away, we're already at $15,000, and that's just starting out. I know a lot of people that are trying to get into the more modified, more household namey kind of cars like Supras, RX-7s. Not a lot of people are talking about just the bare bones to start with price tag, and that's something that a lot of people miss. It takes a lot of money to really hone in on some of those more householdy cars, because there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of desire, and therefore people are going to sell them accordingly to that price. Needless to say, we're going to nix all of the small repairs, because that's really not building that car, that's just maintaining the car. But I did spend about $2,000 to $3,000 in belts, pumps, other timing parts, because the belt being stretched on my timing system, and also fluids for the engine and transmission. Obviously, after we got everything rolling, well, things stopped rolling again. I had to go get another transmission because mine decided to grenade itself in 5th gear. I was going 60 miles an hour at 3,000 RPM to doing 10 miles an hour at 7,000 RPM. That meant I had to get a brand new transmission. That transmission would later on get rebuilt and upgraded with some help with our friends at Moore, and that made that transmission go from being a $1,000 part to a now $5,000 part. Already 20 grand. And all we've done is buy the car and now have a transmission worth its salt. Mind you, the transmission did not get done until just recently. I did have the record trans that was in there working for a while. I figured I would just combine the cost of the record trans and the cost of building it together to give you an idea of what a strong enough transmission is going to cost you. Next up, we got into coilovers. I bought a set of very nice, very good K-Sport coilovers, and it's to this day still one of the more watched videos on this channel. We left a nice review, a little link in the corner for you to check that out. They were solid, and they were $900, and quite honestly, one of the best brands I've ever worked with, because I put them on multiple cars and have not been disappointed on any of the chassis they sit in. A little later on, we went with a set of good old-fashioned Fortunato, native to Virginia, coilovers, and I got those on sale. At full cost, they would have been about 1,500 bucks. I got them on sale because they were part of the Black Friday deal they had with nicks and scratches. And I recommend if you can wait that long and you want a set of really good coilovers, that's probably going to be the best time to buy them, at least from Fortune. No guarantees on stock, however, because nicks and scratches means stuff has to go wrong. And they're very strict about their quality control. So good luck. Next up, wheels and tires. I wheeled a set of NKTS 10s with an 18 by 9.5 setup, and they're really nice. We had these wheels originally wrapped in a set of Falcon RT 615K pluses, and altogether I spent about $2,500 on wheels and tires. For me, totally worth it. I absolutely love the way that they look on the car, and more importantly, I love those tires. Obviously, since then, I've replaced them with some other tires, but I will be going back to them soon. After this, we're going to talk about the aerodynamics, because now that we have the grip, we need to keep that grip going. We first got the rear wing from APR, and that cost me about $1,200. Took a little bit of time to dial it in, but once it was straight, it works. It works really well. In fact, if I go too fast with no bumper on the car now, the car will actually physically lift the front end, and it's kind of sketchy. Which is why we had to go buy the APR splitter not too much longer after, and that was also about. They're both carbon fiber parts, they're both highly functional, and they both work. I know there's going to be tons of people in my comment section, well, what about this, you're not going fast enough to get the advantage. No, they work. I have multiple people who've been in my car that can attest to the fact that they work. It just means that you have to add a lot of downforce into it so that it actually does what you want to do at lower speeds. Otherwise, it really doesn't affect you until you go about 60. After that, let's talk about something that's fun. I got a nice HKS high power exhaust from Japan for a mind-bogglingly cheap price. I don't know if this was considered on sale or not, but I got mine for $200. It sounds great, it looks great, it works well, and it personally, for me, it has the sound that I want. Other people like the carbon tie, and that's obviously a lot more expensive, but I like the way the HKS high power is. It's a much denser metal, so it doesn't have that rasp to it. It has a nice low rumble, and more importantly, I can still have a conversation in the car without shouting. So, yeah, I like my HKS high power. 200 bucks added to the tally. I've lost track of how expensive we have gotten so far. After that, I went with a test pipe. I know I'm admitting to using a non-catted car in a state that requires one, but it technically does have cat stuff in it. It's a Megan test pipe, but was then modified. So I'm gonna nix it from my list because if you're in another state, you won't need that. Test pipes you can get for 150 bucks. There you go. Now we're at the part that everyone wants to know and everyone keeps asking me every time I go places. And to help myself keep my prices accurate, allow me to introduce the entire build sheet of the most recent motor build, because this is the bread and butter. This is where all the money got spent, and even this doesn't have the price of everything on it, because there are a few things that I already had in the car. If you watch this channel over the years, you'll know that we had things like cams and valves and stuff like that done. But even some of those things were replaced here. So let's go through this, and then we'll add the things that we don't have in this list after. I'm not going to individually name every single thing because this thing is multiples of pages. And we're gonna be here for an hour if I did that. So I'm just gonna call out some things that cost more that you will need, in addition to naming off all the parts. I'm just gonna put it to you straight like this because I do have an actual breakdown of what everything costs here. And the parts alone were $20,103.04. That should tell you how much is in my engine. But to call out some more specific items, we've got things like Wiseco pistons, those are $675. Turbo Tough rods from Manley, $785. A brand new crankshaft from Mitsubishi, 900 bucks. Almost all of my engine head is made with GSC parts now, so we're talking valves, both intake and exhaust, zero tick lifters. The springs and retainers are also GSC as well. I'll add those in later on. Brand new oil pan from Mitsubishi is $252 for 4G63s. Got stuff like kinetic head gaskets, tensioners, pulleys, ACL bearings. ARP head studs were $380. There was a coil and plug kit that got replaced on my engine. Not all cars require this. The Evos do. It just helps with timing. Takes it from being batch fired to you can make it sequentially fired. That was $400 for the coil and plug kit from them. We got a lot of radium parts in here. All of these are in regard to the fuel system for the radium stuff. So we're talking rail, pulse dampener, fuel pressure regulator, pressure gauges, the wiring for all of that, even fuel line going from the tank to the front of the car, the pumps in the tank, all of that is related to radium. And we got a race port from Turbo Smart. That by itself was $283. Skunk 2 manifold was $515. A full-blown 70mm throttle body was $300. ETS intercooler fitting the Cusco bar is $700 almost, $689. We have the ETS small battery kit, that's $290. We have an STM oil cooler, $350. Coil rad, $334. Turbo heat shield, $296. This also has the price of the transmission rebuild on it. Completely new clutch parts, all that equaling to about we'll just call it $2,000. There's a whole list of pieces on here, and I'll show some of the pictures on screen for you. That way you guys have a better picture of how much went into this motor. And this doesn't even include some of the stuff that's already on the block that was reused. For some of the other parts that went onto this block, we're talking about like my headers, my twin wastegate system, the turbocharger itself, the downpipe. The downpipe was custom made. My headers feed into twin wastegates, like I said. That whole system came together. I bought it used. I did not buy it new. I do recommend that if you're gonna go somewhere this route, try to buy new, but I was trying to ball out a budget, despite how much all that paperwork was. These are 2 tile wastegates that are on my engine, and they are amazing. But obviously we needed to get the exhaust that they would vent out routed somewhere, and I had some custom fab work set up to send it out the bottom. The turbo itself is a BorgWarner S362. It is a big boy turbo, and I am so happy with it. Sounds awesome, it's gnarly, it builds boost like a champ. That also came with my headers. That whole setup was $700. I know it's hard to imagine, but give yourself a budget of about $1,000 for the turbo, about $1,000 or more, sometimes up to $2 grand for your headers. And if you go with external wastegates like I have, the price is going to go up from there. I'm going to throw in, just for a guesstimate number, about $200 for each wastegate and the hardware to route them. Other things that aren't on this list as well include things like my cams. I got my cams for about $300. Not every car is the same, and not everyone gets the same parts for the same prices, because this market right now is ridiculous. My springs and retainers, we're gonna also call it about $500 because I got it several years ago and we were able to continue to use them. We also have completely fresh injectors in there, and that was about $1,000. We're running dual pumps in the back. I think that was actually in that parts list, so we're straight there. We've also got new axles all the way around. That was about $1,000 in axles, just because I wanted something that was strong enough. It's a lot of pieces already, and we're not even where some of these more clout-based Instagram builds or people even like Dustin Williams are at with their builds. And none of this was done with sponsors. This was all done based out of my own wallet, out of my own paychecks, because I wanted to build something based on my own dreams and visions, and not just build something for the sake of building something. You know, I like to have some intention and purpose with what I'm trying to make. And with this being our flagship car for the channel, we really want to make sure that we went out and we did everything the way that our tuners recommend, but also the way that I had envisioned the car from the beginning. the last thing on this list, I'm just gonna throw it in there as a cheap, easy throwaway thing, is the brake rotors and pads. You're looking at about $500–600 there, because I went with some higher end pads from Hawk and then from EBC. Do your own research, figure out what you like best. For me, the setup I like best is $650 for slotted rotors and really nice pads. So all told, this is where we're at with the car. And again, this does not include some of the more accessory based items in the car, like the stereo, the wiring for that, speakers, other things of that nature, because there is other things in there. This is just to build the car to where it's at. No body work other than the wing and the splitter. That's where you're at. So that leads me to one very simple question. Is it worth it to you? See, for me, this was my dream car. I wanted this car, I wanted this build since I was 10. Since being exposed to Need for Speed Carbon and the Tokyo Drift movie and Too Fast. I wanted to build something that emulated my hero cars and the car that I drove in a video game. And so that led me to where I'm at with my build. The big turbo and a lot of the pop and circumstance that it now has when you drive it. It was what I wanted from when I was young, and it was totally worth it. For me, I could never go back. But for you, maybe you're watching and haven't had a chance to build a build of this quality. Is it worth it to you to spend this much money on a car? Is it worth it to you to go that far? That's something that you're gonna have to answer for yourself. I myself would possibly do it again, but maybe something with a little more practicality, or maybe something that works for one of my businesses. Either way, the ball is in your court. And yes, this is a very honest assessment of how much my entire build costs. For those who go to the level of horsepower that I'm at, I also will throw in one last free ringer, and that's built mounts. I spent about $300 for built mounts, and I'm about to do bushings, and that was $150 as well. With all of that said, there's a peek behind the curtain of what makes Raikkonen tick, and without further ado, God bless y'all, and we'll see you on the next episode, which I will put out there is going to be a couple weeks, because by the time this comes out, we'll be moved out of this apartment and moved into somewhere else. Without further ado, God bless y'all, love y'all, hope to see you soon, and peace.